Hello, welcome to Everyday Experts with me, your host, SirJoker. Today, I am going to bring a man of many talents, of a variety of skill sets that I'm going to interview in a second. But let me explain what Everyday Experts is to you first. It's really just a look at how different people master different tasks, how they walk through life and they acquire different skills and they get great at it. Michael Jordan, Kevin Durant, Jimi Hendrix, all of Rob's favorite musicians. They take certain skill sets and they've perfected it. Those are people we know about. What about the people we don't know about? The everyday experts, the people who just walk around being the social worker, being a great single mother, being a great single parent, doing all those different things. That's what Everyday Experts is about. It's an interview show where we have a conversation, but we put a little twist on it. The interviewee gets to interview me back. So it's really a conversation, it's really a dialogue, and hopefully you'll learn something new about Mr. Robert Fishbeck, who I'm going to bring on in 1 second to begin our conversation. I'll leave you with this quote. Every man I meet is my superior in some way, and that I learn from him. Emerson said that. So let's see what we can learn from our everyday expert, Robert, the robot, Fishbeck. Mr. Fishbeck, sir, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to start the show like I start every show, and the question you've heard a million times. If you could be a werewolf, a zombie, a vampire, a ghost, or a serial killer. And no, I didn't write the question like that. The serial killer part was there. Which one would
Which one would I be? I would definitely be a vampire for a numerous amounts of reasons. First and foremost, the fact that they live for forever, because being eternal is a goal of mine to figure out in this lifetime. Yeah. And also they're somewhat nocturnal, which I kind of find myself to be most of the time. I'm awake all day, but at night, that's really when all the gears start turning. It's when I do my best work, write my best songs, and do all the other things that I do. Yeah.
How do you rein it in? All of the gears and the turning and the constant movement of your brain. How do you hone that into a song? Which we'll start with music, obviously, because I think that's the thing that I don't want to say you love the most, but you gravitate to the most.
Sure. So there's multiple facets to pretty much everything. So first and foremost, I kind of have always had this like thing that when I know everyone else is asleep, that's when I'm free to just do whatever I want. Like,
Right.
I know nobody's going to call me to break my concentration. Nobody's going to go live on YouTube for me to do their time codes for. There's no distraction. Pretty much after 10 p.m. my time, I know I can just do whatever I want and nobody's going to bother me. So that's a big thing with me, especially having like ADHD and stuff, is I need the quiet, concentrate, and just do my thing. So whether it be music or holiday decorating or pretty much anything, that's what works. At least I have found to be, that's what works best for me, and then a lot of the times, whatever starts one night continues into the next day. So like I'll go to bed at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'll wake up at like 9 or 10, make coffee, right, and then pick up where I left off that evening. So then it does transition into day stuff.
How does being diagnosed with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, being diagnosed with that, how does that affect your creative process? Do you think it makes it easier? Because for people that don't know, that means your brain is overstimulated and that there's 8 million things coming into your mind at once. How does that affect your creative process?
Totally. So it affects it, it's like my memory. I say everything's like a gift and a curse. I still outline from Monk, that'll show on USA. There's ups and downs. Like I've got a very good memory. Since COVID started though, my brain's kind of just like rotted a little bit. Don't ask me why, but it has. I'm not as sharp as I used to be, but I'm hoping to get that back. And it's the same thing with everything else. So it's like my brain's just constantly going around.
Right.
So anything that's said, I might grab it out of the air and go, ooh, that's a good line. I'm going to use that for something. And sometimes if I'm fixated on it, because that's what my brain will do. If my brain's like fixated on it, I know it's time to cancel my plans for the remainder of the day and hammer that song out.
Right.
You know, because one line can give me the whole rest of the song. And then other times I'll get an idea for something, or I'll pull a line out of the air and I'll write it down. And then my brain's like, ooh, time to go to the gym.
Right.
So it's getting back to what I'd written down earlier.
Right.
That's where it becomes a hindrance instead of a blessing. So there's that aspect. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out what works for you. And I spent a long time throughout my, life trying to conform to what the norm is or what society, wants you to be or whatever that is.
Right.
And spent a good deal, the first 16, 17 years of my life, I was just me. I did whatever the fuck I wanted. And then spent probably 10 years trying to be normal, And then I got into my later 20s and was like, well, fuck that. What is normal anyways? So that's really when I started to embrace. Yeah, that's really when I started to embrace like, okay, this does not work for me. I know I'm never going to be A, B, C, and D, right? But I know what I want. And I want to be very successful in entertainment. So what am I going to do to get there? Well, the first things first, you got to record an album. You have all these songs, pick 10 of them that have themes, go into a studio and cut it. So that was the first step. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of from there, I've found my path, and it's not the same path most people in America take. Most people, whether they take it or not is a different story, but you're kind of, at least my generation's been raised to, okay, you go to high school and then you go to college, and then, a couple of years after college, you'll find a good job, and then, and find a wife and start having kids at 30, and, that's, and then retire at 65, 68, and that's it. And, from day one, I'm like, I'm not interested in any of that. Who put a timestamp on any of these things? I'll do all of that when I'm good and ready to, because I want to travel. And it's like, what if I fall in love with somebody that doesn't want to travel? It's like, well, I'm going to do that now,
Right.
So that's where the ADHD comes into play as well. So there's that.
We'll go back a little bit and talk about young Robert, aka Young Robot. Your childhood, because you mentioned that the first 10 years of your life, 16 years, you said?
Yeah.
You were trying to be like, quote unquote, normal. What was that like? What did it look like?
The first 16 years.
Rob like?
Yeah, the first 16 years, I was just Rob. And then I became like some altered version of Rob from like 16 to 26. And then I went back to being Rob. But when I was like, you're asking specifically like when I was 16? Pretty much like everybody else. That's when I started drinking and smoking pot and smoking cigarettes and chewing tobacco and driving an automobile, right. Doing all that sort of shit. But it was, I was 5 years old when I got into music, and I was into movies at that age, but probably like when I was like 10, that's when I got into like classic film. Mm-hmm. So I spent all of those years being like this old man, that would just watch old movies and listen to records and shit. And then when I was like 16, 17, you get a driver's license and, you know, all that sort of stuff. You can do whatever you want. You know, the whole world opens up. You know, my house backed up to a bike trail. So I'd walk to the movie theater. It was about 10-minute walk. You know, we'd get days off of school and some of my friends would phone me up, want to hang out. You know, there's nobody to answer the house phone because I was at the movies or, you know, whatever it was. Because I've always done what I've wanted to do. And that's the reality of it, you know. So, but yeah, like 16-year-old Rob, just like I had a Jeep. I loved my Jeep. I used to take it wheeling all the time. That was a lot of fun. That thing lasted about 3 years, and you just dump so much money into it. It's just a money pit because you're just breaking shit all the time, you know. Then I got a truck, which I just got rid of about 6 months ago. So, yeah.
So I saw that one of the people wrote that, you know, you're your own entity, like your own being. When did that start? I mean, 20 years old, 26, 5.
When did I become Rob?
Like, I'm Rob, hi, spirit fingers.
I became Rob pretty much from day one.
Okay.
My kindergarten teacher had to have a talk with my mom and was like, he just looks out the window. You know, I'm trying, you know, he interacts with the kids and, you know, when he talks to people, he's, you know, really popular. Like everybody likes him, but most of the time he doesn't want to talk to anybody. And he just sits, he stares out the window. And she's like, he's waiting to go home to listen to the Beatles. You know, he can't wait to get out of school, you know, because I just wanted to go home and study records, you know, and at 5 or 6, it's like, it's not mixing. It's not, you know, oh, that's a 12-string guitar. No, it's like, I'm studying who's singing. Is it Paul or John? You know, or is it George? Curveball, you know, because we didn't have the internet then.
Right.
So that was the kind of stuff I was obsessed with. And, you know, I loved movies, like I said, when I was a kid. So I've always been Rob. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Fox, shout out to Mrs. Fox. She had a conversation with my mother and was like, he's like this all the time in class. You know, everybody can't just sit still like everybody else. He just, you know, and it's a combo of my ADHD and like, I didn't want to be there. And, you know, I just want to go home and rock out. And I'm like 5, 6 years old. And that never changed, you know, that it's always been that way. So I've always marched to the beat of my own drum. And over the last few years have really figured out how to make it work for myself, you know, and just embrace it.
So a lot of times we see something in somebody else that reminds us of ourselves, maybe something that we like.
Sure. As he's frozen on the screen right now, we'll wait for Joker to come back. Got a little lag there.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, there he is.
In your early, maybe we'll say the first 25 years of your life. First 25 years of life. When did you meet somebody who had maybe a quality that you liked or didn't like about yourself that you saw and recognized and decided, oh, I got to change this, or I got to change this about myself?
So I have this, it's a gift of perception. And I don't think you could be a songwriter if you didn't have that talent, that gift, I call it.
Right.
So I see aspects of myself in everybody that I meet, you know, because surprisingly enough, one of the things about humans is that we all have things in common. Right. Even your mortal enemy that you despise, you have way more things in common than you would think that you do.
Right.
So whenever I meet anybody, or any of my friends, anybody that I know personally, you know, you get to know them and you kind of go, okay, I see myself in these maybe good things, and or maybe I see myself in these negative qualities. Ooh, you know, maybe I should stop doing that. You know, like that's not, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you say you find things in common with people, and I know yesterday when we were, preparing, we were talking about like allergies and all that stuff. And I do think
Right.
that you recognize aspects of people's personalities or people's creativity that you're just like, oh, wow, would really align. And one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you first is because who would have known, the quote unquote, and I only say this because you say this, the country redneck from Illinois,
Right.
and the black guy from Long Island would have so many things in common creatively.
We
How
have
do you
so much in
respond
common.
to that?
It's so, once again, COVID, there's just so many, terrible things, obviously, over the last 16, 17 months, to say the very least, along
Right.
with all the other things going on in the world at large, let alone just in the United States.
Right.
But, getting to know people that live across the whole country,
Yeah.
I think is pretty neat, because we would never have, met each other ever.
Right.
We'd have gone the rest of our lives without knowing one another. We had a mutual thing in common. That's how we, first met. And then we've just kind of taken it from there.
Right.
But once again, and I say this because it's true, I'm who I am. I'm, white boy from the Midwest.
Oh.
That's just me. It's in my DNA. It's who I'll always be. And you're from New York, and you've got your background, but yet we get along so well, because we found these common threads, i.e., you're a poet and I'm a musician. Well, what's the one thing that both of those have in common? Words. We're really good with words, and we find a way to use words and put them in a specific order,
right,
to produce art.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once you start finding common threads in people, you can go, okay, well, I think we could work on this project together.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I love, is collaborating.
Yeah.
I've never co-written a song. I've tried to co-write songs. It's never worked out quite well, because like I do what I do.
Right.
I'm not closed-minded to trying it again, but I just, it works for me. The me writing the songs the way I do. But in terms of collaboration, like working on projects, or like, hey, like before the pandemic started, I was talking to a couple bands that I know and artists that I know about doing like they used to do these, they're called review shows back in like the 60s. So like Berry Gordy at Motown Records would take the Four Tops and the Supremes and Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and put them all on a bus or in a couple of cars and send them out on the road.
Right.
And you'd buy tickets for like an hour and a half, 2 hour show, and you'd get 30 minutes of each band, or each artist. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, they call those festivals now, and they're a lot larger scale. But to me, I was like, why are we not why does nobody do that anymore? And right before COVID started, I was talking with some people, and I was like, we should all plan a tour, of like different cities. And you can make money, you're not just breaking even if you take 4 acts out,
right,
and travel. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, for me, once again, it's I love to work with other highly creative people. So whether, now with YouTubers, right? Musicians, hosts, actors, actresses, writers, all that sort of stuff. I'm down for all of it. I think he froze again. So yeah, there's that. Oh, he's back.
Well, let me ask you a question. So now, as we go into the next part, which is kind of like Rob 101.
Okay.
10-year-old Rob, 20-year-old Rob.
Okay.
And soon to be 30-year-old Rob.
Okay.
Are at dinner. What is that conversation? Or at dinner? What is that conversation like?
10-year-old Rob's talking to me, like current Rob, going, how many Grammy Awards do you have? And I'm going, none. And they're going, okay, well, how I'm going to start 10-year-old Rob's going, all right, I'm going to plan things differently so that by the time I'm that age, I've got a couple Grammy Awards. 20-year-old Rob is on Adderall, probably high, Worried about, should the song be in the key of G or should it be in C? And current Rob is going, it doesn't fucking matter. It really, like, whatever feels right, just make a decision and go with it. And 10-year-old Rob's going, wait, you're a musician? I thought you were going to be a screenwriter. Or I thought I was going to be a screenwriter. Right. Because originally that's what I wanted to do. And, I just wanted to write screenplays and direct my own films. That's what, I pretty much, other than, well, 4 things my whole life. Film critic, which, it's kind of a dying art form, to be honest with you. Because to me, it was like, if you're going to be a film critic, you've got to be on national television or, in print newspapers, right? Like Roger Ebert, he's from, Chicago. Roger Ebert was my hero growing up. Obviously, I know now, I've just found out over the last 2-3 years that you can do that on YouTube, and there's a thing called digital media, print on your phone, right? But that it never went away, but it kind of dwindled for a while when I was like coming in my own as like a late teenager. I always want to write for Rolling Stone magazine and be, like, have you ever seen the movie Almost Famous?
Maybe.
Yeah. So I always wanted to be a music journalist and write for like Rolling Stone or something. And then by the time I was like 15, 16, I realized, well, this is all kind of biased bullshit. It's not true. Music journalism was a thing in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. But once the 2000s hit and major corporations owned everything, which I don't like, and like Rolling Stone magazine, I don't follow them on Twitter anymore. I unsubscribed from them on Facebook because it's not, they always did political stuff. They always did pop culture stuff, but it's just a bunch of recycled bullshit now. It's not, the people that work there, they're so out of touch with what actually is going on in music for the most part. So once again, they're kind of, when I was a little kid, I wanted to own a video store. That job doesn't exist anymore either.
You want to own a blockbuster. So I hear you.
It really came down to, writing and directing film. And then by the time I was like 17, I was like, well, maybe I could be like a singer-songwriter, like Bob Dylan or like Neil Young. And, I took piano lessons when I was a kid for like 2 years, but I don't come from an extensive training background or musical background. I couldn't sing. You should have heard me when I was 18. I couldn't sing a lick, but I made a decision and was like, because I went to LA when I was like 15 and I would go there now. But when I was like 15, I was like, this place is fucking weird. It's just full of a bunch of like freaks. I'm a white Christian guy from a small town right outside of Chicago. Like this place is weird to me, Plus 2, there's, like, just like there's in Nashville, there's thousands of people that are just as hungry as you are to make it, so that whole, like, being a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond, it's all whatever. But I was like, plus 2, the music or the movie industry was changing, around 2007, 2008. So I was like, well, let's try this. Why don't we buy a guitar and give yourself a year, see if you can't learn to play the damn thing and possibly sing. So, my vocals now, I'm a little rusty than I was a year and a half ago, but my vocals now I listened to myself when I was like 20 and I'm like, Jesus, whoa. And then I listen to myself when I'm like 25 and I'm like, wow, you've come far since 25. But it took me about a year. I figured out, once you learn CGF, once you learn like a handful of chords, I just wanted to become good enough at guitar to be able to write songs. So once I kind of had that down, I probably plateaued as a guitar player, maybe like 21, 22. And I don't really regret it because I was never interested in like really learning how to jam on an electric guitar or anything, because I was like, well, that's what a lead guitar player is for.
Right.
You know, like I want to have a band. Like I just want to concentrate on working the stage and the crowd and singing and playing rhythm guitar and writing the songs.
Right.
You got your lead guitar player, you've got your bass player, you know, lap steel or fiddle or keyboards or insert whatever, saxophone, and then you've got drums behind you, you know, or sometimes, you know, slightly to your left. So for me, it was like, you know, once again, I want to concentrate on writing songs. I don't want to get caught up in trying to learn how to play AC/DC's Back in Black, you know, front and backwards, inside out, because that's going to take me away from writing songs, you know? So there's that. But yeah, 10-year-old Rob, 20-year-old Rob, and current Rob, that needs to be in a cabin in the middle of nowhere where there are no people for at least 90 miles, because the energy in that room might start a new timeline.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
You had mentioned collaboration. So like as we go into like your artistic process and how you actually create the songs, which is, you know, where you were headed. If I was to say, when I collab with somebody on poetry, I'll write a poem, I'll write a stanza, they'll write a stanza, we'll put it together, I'll make it, you know, I'll go over it and make it flow.
Right.
If I was to say, okay, Rob, let's say in a different world, I can sing, I can't, and I can play the guitar, I can't. Rob, let's collaborate on a song. What would I see if I was going to go to the studio with you or go to watch your creative process? What's that like?
By the time I'm in a studio, I know pretty much what I'm going for. I've got it all in my head.
Yeah.
And you can ask Brian Wilson this, you can ask Paul McCartney this, you could ask Springsteen this, the sounds that you have in your head. And like, I'm so appreciative that I came from I always wished that I was just born in the 40s, because I feel like I really would have thrived in the early days of rock and roll. But I'm so appreciative that there are, you know, these songwriter artist heroes of mine that I was able to learn from on a level that wasn't like, well, you know, here's the verse and now we're going to go to the chorus. And then maybe sometimes we'll throw in a bridge. The stuff that I learned from them was like stuff that I could actually put to use. Like I listened to these interviews growing up all the time, and well, we got into the studio and we spent, you know, 3 weeks on the drums and they just didn't sound like they sounded in my head.
Right.
And once you come to the realization that what you hear in your head, even if 95% of that gets on tape or now in the cloud, right? You're still going, well, it doesn't sound like it sounds in my head, but nothing's ever going to. This is not how, you know, it's not how it works. So, like I said, people like Brian Wilson and Springsteen and stuff, that really kind of helped me out with those sort of things. So, I went back, I was doing prep for this show, and I was listening to songs off my debut album. And I just wanted to throw it in the garbage.
Album called
Tomorrow Is Forever. I wanted to throw it in the garbage.
Okay.
And we spent 6 months in the studio on that. Not like every day, but like once a week for 4 or 5 hours. I want to just take it out of iTunes and just throw it in the trash can and redo the whole fucking record. Well, that's why you just make another album. It's not that it's bad. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people listen to it and go, wow, this sounds amazing. But to me, it's like, it was my first time cutting a record, like for real. I knew what I wanted, but my friend Ben, so this is how it worked. Summer 2018 was like, all right, we're gonna cut a record. So I visited about a dozen recording studios. You know, I had a price point in mind that I couldn't go over. And a lot of these cats were just, you know, they got Pro Tools and they're running something out of their spare bedroom. And I'm going, you know, this shit's not for me. Like, I need to be in an environment that works. So the second to last person I saw was my now friend Ben. who owns DZ Records in Palos Hills. And I went down there and we talked for about an hour. We had a meeting. I told him what I was going for. And I kind of figured out early on, we come from two very different worlds. He comes from indie rock. And that's pretty much what he does. And he records a lot of different sorts of bands. But it's that very much that DIY aesthetic where I come from the old school. You spend 20 hours a week in a studio for 9 months to get the record, where he comes from the aesthetic that, you know, in 5 hours, you should have knocked out 2 or 3 tracks. And it's that's just not my process. That's just not how, you know, I know what I want, but to get there, it's going to take forever. You know, we are going to spend hours to get a drum sound that I'm satisfied with, you know, and that's how you develop a reputation of being a pain in the ass. But, you know, however it sounds coming out of my mouth, I don't care, because if the music is better than everybody else's and I'm a pain in the ass in the studio, then I'm a pain in the ass in the studio. I'm fine with that, you know, because what I want more than, and I make the joke like, oh, I wish I had more Grammys.
Yeah.
What I truly mean by that is my number one goal, more than fame and more than money and more than all that stuff, is to be respected amongst my peers. And when I say peers, I mean the people in my head that I have a lot of respect for as songwriters, you know, to be respected in that inner circle of those, you know, couple hundred people. That's what I want.
Okay.
You know, and that's, I think for the most part, that's what the greats always did want. You know, I mean, look at Sgt. Pepper. If there wasn't Pet Sounds, if Brian Wilson wouldn't have done Pet Sounds, there never would have been a Sgt. Pepper. But Paul heard that record and was like, whoa, you know. And back in the day, you know, with music now, a lot of times you're chasing something that you hear on the radio and you're just copying it. You know, back then you'd hear something and just be so inspired by it. You're not ripping them off. You're just going to do your version of that, you know? Right. So they went and they cut Sgt. Pepper, and, you know, it's one of the biggest albums of all time, you know? So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just kind of how I work. That's kind of my process.
Okay. So going off some of the stuff that you said a little bit earlier, you had said you have a thought in your head. So when I write, for the most part, it's going to sound weird. I kind of think in like poetry. I think in poems, because if that's the medium I'm going to process, then that's how I'm going to think. So what's in my head as the poem, it's the framework. Might not be the whole poem, but it's the basis of it. And you said and is it different when you're writing music I write the song part, I'm making the music part, when you have to like put them together? Is that what you mean, that head to paper is different?
So this is what works for me. And you could interview 100 different songwriters and probably get 100 different variations of the same answer. Okay.
Right.
I'm somebody who, you use the word framework. Okay. Right. And I think I know what you mean, but before I answer your question, I do want to get an answer for what you mean. When you say framework, you mean this is here's your framework. Emotion I'm trying to convey, story I'm trying to tell, and characters, i.e. the vessel in which I'm going to tell that tale to convey that emotion through.
I would say yes.
Okay.
I would say yes, that this is what I want to say. This is the general idea of how I want to say it. It might not be refined. It might not be 100%. And this is how I anticipate a reader is going to read it or a listener is going to hear it. So that's when I say framework. That's what I mean.
Okay. That's framework for me as well.
Okay.
So, for example, Matt put it in the chat. This easiest example I can give. It's the last song I wrote. So I wrote this song called Roller Coaster, which I'm sure everybody here knows. If you don't, find it on YouTube. It's for somebody's show. Okay. And the person always describes the show as it's a roller coaster. You go from talking about this to talking about that and all this stuff in between. So, I'm like, well, I want to write this song.
Right.
Okay. I had for 2 months, I had 6 different songs that I could have written, but I didn't want to come out with something that was in a minor key. So 2 of the songs wouldn't work. A minor key. So a minor key is, so you've got like A, but then you've got A minor. Those are usually they sound sad, those kind of songs. Okay. Or they're deep. They're real deep. Okay. Those are usually in a minor key. John Prine used to have this great quote that it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. He'd go, when you get to the minor chord in the song, that's when the sad part's coming. And if the song starts in a minor chord, you might just not want to visit that family. But anyway, so it was like, okay, well, that would work for the second song that I would want to come out with, but not the lead. I don't want to come out of the gate with a song that's in a minor key. I want to do something in a major key, something that's like up tempo, right? So I was settled on 2 ideas. And then one day I was like, well, why don't we make it me, i.e. the character in the song, is the guy that's standing outside of the circus tent or the amusement park, or the guy, like at the car dealerships, they got the wavy guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm that guy. And I'm holding the sign, step right up. Come on down. And use the roller coaster as the vessel to convey the message that I'm trying to get across. So once I came up with that, then everything just kind of falls together. So, okay, you're on a roller coaster. You're going up, you're going down, you're going around. Sometimes you do the loop-de-loop, right? Mm-hmm. Well, all the different parts of the ride are all different sections of the show. Okay. So once I figured that out, the song writes itself. Right. And I say this all the time and I mean it. It's not some arrogant thing that I'm trying, just being an asshole. Sometimes I'm not writing the songs. I'm just the vessel. Right. The songs just come, Damp, which is a track off my first record. Mm-hmm. I've told this story a dozen times, but I'll tell it again. It's a quick story. I was at a concert with some friends, and I had a flannel shirt on like this, like a plaid shirt. Mm-hmm. And it was hot. It was a hot night. So I took the shirt off and I just put it on the ground in the grass, and it got wet from like all the dew and shit. So we got home, and I stayed the night at my friend's house. So I just put it on top of her dryer and was like, I'll just, it'll just air dry. Right. I woke up the next day and I was making food, and I was looking at it and I go, that shirt's kind of at a crossroads. Because is that shirt, does it need to get put in the dryer? Does it need to like get hung outside for a half an hour? Because it's not really dirty. You don't necessarily have to wash it. Do you just go put it back in the closet and, maybe it smells a little musty, but you just live with it? The shirt's kind of at a crossroads. So I used the shirt as a vessel for characters that were at crossroads in their life. And the songs, the refrain is just like a damp shirt, sitting in your home. You got to do something with it. It can't just sit there. It has to make a move. It has to make a decision. So that's it. That's what works for me. So once you have the framework, you know what you're going for. And then once you figure out, okay, this is what I'm going for. Once you figure out what the vessel is, whatever that is, or if it's a narrative song, right, you just got to write the story because it's a narrative song. You don't need a vessel. It's just a narrative song, right? Try and find a chorus or a refrain or a catchy bridge, insert that. Everything just kind of comes together. And then once you've got all of that, right, that's when I turn my phone on silent, bury myself, grab my guitar, and go, well, this is going to be an up-tempo song. Let's put it in A, or let's put it in E. Or if it's going to be a little bluesier, we'll put it in E. or we'll put it in G, or this is going to be one of those songs. So let's capo it like on the 4th fret and we're going to play it in D sharp or something, you know? Yeah. That's how I write.
I like that because when you were, I don't remember what exactly you were saying, and you were talking about inspiration. And when you are gleaning inspirations, like, so when you're getting inspiration from something,
yeah,
what do you do with it? Is it something that you gotta get out of your head right now? Is it something that can wait a few minutes?
So it's interesting. I like to use the word urgency. How urgent is it for me to get this song out to the world? Like, hear ye, you've got to hear this song right the fuck now. And if it's that urgent, it writes itself so fast and I just get it done. If it's a song that I want to, like a fine wine, or when you're cooking chicken in a slow cooker, in a roaster, you got to let it sit for a bit, marinate, whatever it is.
Right.
So sometimes, and it also depends if I'm writing the song for someone. If I know somebody's not, they need this or they really need a song right now. Well, then I'm going to go make coffee and I'm going to get the song done. It's urgent, or if it's a timely song, I need to get it out. A lot of the times, though, probably 80% of the time, it doesn't happen that way. It's a line or a verse or a chorus, and I write it down so I don't forget it, or I put it in my phone so I don't forget it. And then I catch myself in the shower singing the melody. There's Exercising the Blues, the closing track on the record. I think I fucked with that song. I never even tried to write it. I was in the shower and I was singing this depression's got a hold on me for 2 months. Right. Once a day, I'd go through that line in my head and see if magically the second line could come. And I go, this depression's got a hold on me. And I wasn't depressed, but I liked the line and I liked the idea of it for the themes of the album. I've suffered from depression most of my life, but at that point I was not actually depressed.
Right.
And in the shower, just think about it. This depression's got a hold on me. And I was like, well, what do you do when this depression's got a hold on you?
Yeah.
You need an exorcism.
Yeah.
To get it out of you. So I came up with this idea, exercising the blues. Literally, not like we're going to work out, right, but we're going to pull the blues out of your soul,
like a possession.
So once I had that, I go, all right, well, let's just write this narrative. This happy, this very melancholy, it's in G.
Right.
No, it's in C. I lied. It's in C. It's C, F, and G. Those are the chords. It's not anything complicated. Anybody that's been playing guitar for a year could learn most of my songs. Put it in C. The narrative itself doesn't have to be complicated. You can make it specific, but yet make it universal at the same time. Make it very vague. You can talk about an animal in it, but don't name the animal. Don't give the animal a name. Make it vague. But the chorus being, exercising the blues. I'm exercising the blues. And then so when we went to go cut the song, cut the whole thing. And I'm playing it back and I'm listening to it for days. Like I said, my friend Ben, we're friends now. We became friends while I was making the record. Because just like how we became friends, we're very different people, but there's this common thread, we did a movie podcast up until COVID, the record got done and we're like, well, we got to keep working together. So we started a movie podcast,
That's awesome.
But we're in the studio and I'm listening to the mix and I'm like, it's flat. It's totally flat. Like this does not convey it's like when you're making food, or baking a cake or something, like all the ingredients are there, but it doesn't taste the way you want it to taste or smell the way you want it to smell. And it's got nothing to do with the EQ on the drums. And it's not like your guitar wasn't in tune or the bass hit a wrong note or your vocal went out of tune on a note. It's none of that. Everything's right.
Right.
And so my friend Ben goes, I got an idea. And I was like, what's up? He goes, I have a friend that plays the cello. They'll be over next week.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to have them come in and put this on there. And I said, okay. So I came back, I don't know, week and a half, 2 weeks later, because this was during winter time. So with the weather around here, if you don't have a record company that's waiting for you to turn something in, and the record's not coming out until June 1st anyways, sometimes you'll wait due to bad weather. Right. So I ended up going back over there about 2 weeks later. I'm almost done my story, by the way. So go back over there about 2 weeks later, and he plays me the song. And we get to the ending, okay? So my friend Mike played the drums on the whole album, okay? Shout out to Mike Palumbo. And he's a great drummer. He's a jazz drummer. He plays like Buddy Rich, okay? So playing Americana music was very easy for him because it's so dumbed down. It's just bread and butter drums. It's nothing complicated, right? But he's not a rock drummer. Okay. So Ben had his friend that played the drums come in and go bang, 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 bang. And then the cello hits. And it's like, now it's hitting the nail on the head. That's what we were looking for. We sat there, mixed the thing in 30 minutes, and we were done with the track. So sometimes you go back to what you were talking about with collaboration. I never would have thought, because I don't know a cello player. I never would have thought it needs strings, but he knew, because he knew me well enough at that point. We'd known each other for about 6 months. He knew how my brain was wired and was like, I got it. I know what you're missing.
Yep. So when you talked about urgency, when you were writing a song for somebody, and you talked about, this person needs a song. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to help them out. I'm going to do this right now. When you talk about damp or riding the blues, exercising the blues.
Yeah.
Does it help you? Do you go back and listen to it and oh, wow, I might not have known I was in the space or I was in the place that I needed for that song, but now I'm kind of devouring it emotionally.
Yeah. So there's so many different pockets of Rob. It's I don't have multiple personality disorder. But sometimes people will make that joke. Right. Because when I'm in songwriting mode, it's a switch. And once that's turned on, there's, you're lucky if I can remember to brush my teeth. So every song I've ever written, I go back and listen to it and go, holy fuck, I wrote that song. Every single time, and I go, wow, because you're taking nothing. You're taking the air, and you're putting a melody to it and narrative lyrics, hopefully with a good hook. You just make that shit up. Yep. It's just all made up. So I'll go, wow, and then some songs you go, okay, that's what I was looking for. It was kind of a mid-tempo rocker, and I don't call it, that's why I only have so many songs on a record, because I don't like filler. I hate records that, when the CD came out, because LPs, you could only have 44 minutes.
Okay.
So you could only fit so many tracks on it. But when the CD came out, you can have an hour and 20 minutes on there. So it's every fucking band on the planet starting in 1990, you'd write 15 songs for the record and cut them and then narrow it down to 12. Well, now there's 15, 17 songs on, and it's not a double album. It's just one CD. And I hate filler, but it's okay, Working Girl. It did exactly what I want, because Working Girl, okay, was the introduction of another character on the album. And so the song needed to be there. It's not just a mid-tempo rocker, okay? it needed to bridge the gap between Border Town and White Noise narratively, so that by the time we got to side 2, track 6, Under the Stars, you felt like by the time you get to track 6, you've met all of the types of characters in the first 5 tracks.
Yeah.
Now you're invested emotionally with the themes and ideas of the album. Now we can get to, well, where are you going? You know,
Yeah.
side A is the setup, side B's the execution. Okay.
Right.
So some songs you go back and you're like, okay, that song did its job. You know, sometimes the job of the song is just to dig the ditch, you know, so that way the next song can be the water that fills the ditch. But you have to have the ditch dug in order to get the water in there. So, but then some songs like Damp or Try, 1% Better, which I wrote back last fall, those songs I go back and listen to and go, you know, you were really on it that day.
Yeah.
You really focused, and, you know, I'm very satisfied with how that song turned out.
Right.
You know.
And that was a beautiful answer, sir. But the question was, do you ever go back and like take anything emotionally, take anything feeling wise from the songs where you were like, ooh, this is cathartic. This is, you know.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, I don't like, it's not like I go back and laugh at the song or cry at the song or get chills listening to the song, because I made it up, you know, and usually I know the people that I based the song on or who that song's for. You know, those are my secrets that I'll take to my grave. But no. But I do go back and listen to it and go, you know, you kind of needed this song because you're reminding yourself, you know, just like a damp shirt sitting in your home. And that's another thing with my music. Y'all, you have any idea how many songs are out there? So many songs. Just, you know, that's why I don't just I'm just going to sit down and write a love song, because if I can't write a love song that says the same thing in a new, different, original, or interesting way, I'm not going to bother trying to write the damn thing, because there's enough love songs out there. But if I feel like I can contribute something with a different spin to it, then I'll write it. So for me, a lot of the songs that I write because people need those songs, because those songs don't exist. So a song like Damp, I'm sure there's a lot of songs about crossroads or whatever out there, but not said in that way. So I'll go back and listen to it and go, well, you needed to hear this song as much as your audience in your head. You know, so there's that.
That's when it clicks.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, excellently. Okay. So when you give the narrative of the song, of the album, going back, you said that you used to want to write screenplays. Is your album a play? Characters, scenes?
Yeah. So, you know, I love so much music. There's so much. That's, you know, you can go watch any of my shows and hear me ramble on about it. Yeah. But I love songs that are cinematic. So if you go back and listen to the Shangri-Las, Leader of the Pack, or Remember Walking in the Sand, or you go back and listen to Roy Orbison singing, you know, It's Over, or Crying, or, you know, Only the Lonely, any of that sort of stuff, right? They're songs that you listen to them and you could adapt it into a 2-hour film based on, you know, the song, you know, and then Bob Dylan came in and just really, you know, doubled down on that. And then the 70s hit, and then a lot of the people that I like, that's what they do. They write these cinematic, you know, songs. My number one goal has always been this, and I don't know if I've ever said this on air, but I'll say it now. What I've always wanted to do is write an album, So that takes a bit, and then you got to record it and then put it out and then tour for it. And then while on tour, adapt the album into a screenplay, not a musical. And then the next year, make the film, make the companion piece. So if I were to make Tomorrow Is Forever into a film with a cast of characters, different subplots, et cetera, with common threads and themes, okay, it's not going to feature any of my music. Maybe the score would have some motifs, some riffs and melodies from my songs, but it's not like Pink Floyd The Wall. It's not like that at all. And you could go see the film having never heard my music and get the exact same emotional reactions, themes, and character studies as if you were to just go listen to the record. But it's a 2-hour movie.
Right.
So what I've always wanted to do is album, film, companion piece, album, film, companion piece, et cetera, and literally build it that way.
A multimedia project like that would be pretty cool. So I want to take a minute to shout out Matt Munoz for our first Streamlabs. The good sir said, love how the show is going, Joker. Keep it up, my man. Being Anomaly, Everyday Experts is my favorite show. Gang, gang, gang. Thank you, brother. So as we kind of roll into the end.
Yeah.
Next question I have, sir, is you have a song on your album called White Noise.
Okay.
What does it mean?
Do you want to play the song first, or ask me the question?
Let's play part of it so people can hear it. Let's plug your music, sir.
We ran uphill to race down the drain. So my sister sit still, else we'll take off insane. We were just kids, lighting crackers July day. One misfired shot rang out as we ran away, and the white noise came round, and it was the only sound. Chasing girls for miles, hoping for the one to find. Wasted days in the sun, both working part-time. Went from brothers to Christmas cards, over 10 years and some change. Guess she'd had enough of that when she took a man's name. And the white noise came round, and it was the only sound. July's past, though the smell of mold, though gunpowder still resigns. Everyone's growing harder, soft, wonder should we get in line. Said she's tired of talking about the things we'll never do. Stole out on the pothole, hoping one day you'll break through. And the white noise came round, and it was the only sound.
Love it. I've heard it about 4 or 5 times. And the reason why I picked that one song is because I have a book called Black Noise. Okay. And in the synopsis on the back, the quote I use is, a poet's autobiography is his poetry. Anything else is just a footnote. So now, when we talk about white noise as juxtaposed to black noise, as we know, white noise is kind of like the you had a crackling. Take what I said about black noise, take where your headspace was with white noise, and take the gray noise. See what I did there? Take the gray noise and tell me what you were thinking when you wrote white noise and where you were going with it. Your landing point.
So this is one of my favorite. It's so funny that out of all this, we were talking right before we went live, and you said you were talking about this song, and I was like, I can go on about this one. So the idea of it happened long before I wrote the song. I was driving home. I won't name names or anything, but one of my close friends I hadn't heard from in a while. This is going back, I was maybe like 24, and he was with this girl, and they're not together anymore. And he was with this girl and kind of changed him. Not, I wouldn't say in a good way. You know, he's back now, luckily. But we were so close for so long, and you know, you couldn't get a hold of the guy for a while.
Right.
And I'd come up with this. I was driving home. It was Christmas Eve, and I was driving home from a friend's house. And I was like, you know, we went from like being brothers to like being those people, you know, like when you get older, well, maybe not our generation, but like our parents' generation, you know, you'd get these Christmas cards in the mail, and you'd be like, Mom, you know, who are these people? You know, it's a picture of their family or something. It says Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or whatever. And your mom would go, oh, that's so-and-so. We were friends in college, you know. Well, I've never met them. You know, well, they live in blah, 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 blah. And we talk on the phone a couple times a year. And, you know, see, you go from being like brothers to being like those Christmas card people, right? So the idea, you know, and at the time mixed in with, you know, when it's really quiet and all you hear is the white noise, you know, and your brain's going to do whatever it's going to do. That's left to the listener. But for me, what I wanted to convey was there's different verses to the song, and they all tell these different stories. You know, they could be connected. They might not be. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But every verse ends with, and the white noise came round and it was the only sound. Decision time. Is it decision time? Is it lament time? You know, to sit and ponder and look back? Is it, you know, what is it? You know, and it's, once again, I leave it vague for a reason so that the listener can interpret it the way they want to interpret it. But for me, that's how that song came about. It was that mindset. I was driving home on Christmas Eve, 2014. And, you know, I was like, you know, we went from like being brothers to like these Christmas card people, you know. And then a year later, there's a movie called White Noise with Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And it was on one of the premium channels. And I was like, there's actually, if you, little trivia hint, Easter egg, there are 2 songs on my debut album that are actually movie titles. I'm not going to say what the other one is. Let the audience figure it out. But I was like, you know, that's a really interesting title, you know, and I've seen the movie. The movie's got nothing to do with the song.
Right.
And neither does the other song. And I said, that's kind of like when everything's silent and all you hear is silence, but not the sound of silence. It's that white noise. So then I was like, well, went from brothers to Christmas cards. And then you kind of get sad for a second and you hear the white noise. Bingo. Got the guitar out and I write the song. And it was like 3 minutes long. And I was like, man, this song's a drag. It's too slow. You know, we ran uphill to race down the drag. And I'm like, this turns the song into a drag. Let's speed it up. So I sped it up to make it like urgent, like come hither, come listen, you know. And the song clocked in at about 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And I said, well, Paul McCartney said everything he wanted to say in Yesterday, and that was 2 minutes and 11 seconds long. I've said everything I've wanted to say in 2 minutes and 5 seconds. So I think I crunched it up even a little more than Paul did. And then that was it. You know, what's it like for you? I mean, like those are my motivations and drives and stuff. Like what's your motivation and drive to produce something in a timely fashion?
when it comes to writing, the hard part for me is now I'm working on book number 11, collection number of poetry number 11.
Yeah.
So when the art feels like flaccid and damp and weak, I'm like, well, how can I reinvigorate? So I've had a couple times when I've had to go and read my old books to kind of be hungry again. You know, at one point I read one of Nikki Giovanni's whole books of poems, and I was like, okay, I see what I need to do. Or when I wrote Still Scarred, it was like How We Got These Scars was like my second or third book. And I was like, well, how can I stay motivated? How can I find something that drives me? And I was writing Heir to the Throne, which is my current book out. Go to elpoetaguasan.com. And my father passed away. So where the book was, it was going in a different direction because, you know, writing the art kind of takes you. You know, you kind of go where the pen goes. But I was like, oh, and it just didn't feel like I was doing the proper service to the emotions I was feeling. Because I don't write a lot of stuff when I'm in a heavy emotional state anymore. Like when I was younger, when I first started, I don't have to be sad to write a sad poem or a breakup poem. And I don't have to be like, oh, I'm in love, yada, yada. Yes, I love my wife. And you could say every love poem's about her in an extent. But I don't have to be in that headspace to write about that. So I would say what motivates me are people or their experiences or conversations I've had where, oh, this person's going through that. Just like you said, this person needs a song. This person needs a poem. They need something to encapsulate where they are, how they're feeling, where this is where their heart is at, and it's on their sleeve. So, you know, how can I grab it and paint a snapshot of what they're feeling right now?
I love that. That's great. How do you find the balance between, you know, well, for example, I mean, you're married, I'm not. You have children, I don't.
Yeah.
But I have other things that occupy my time.
Yeah.
How do you find the balance between your work life, your family life, your personal life, your life with your friends and, you know, work colleagues or whatever that be, and then your art? How do you get it in there? How do you squeeze it in there? Or is it, you know, take precedence over other things, you know, and you more squeeze in other things?
I would say, obviously, family and work are first. The kids, wife, all that. That's the priority. Then if I have, when I'm writing, because I write in sprints. I don't just write like 5 poems every day. I write in sprints. I write, okay, it's been a week. Let me get these 15 poems done over a bunch of months. Because the books probably get written in 4 to 5 months. Then it's the editing and the re-editing. And because it's writing poetry, when you're writing and you're reading back what you wrote, you put words down that might not be there. Because what I'm reading and what I think I'm reading might not be on the same page. So then you got to send it to other people to look at. Then it's got to be edited. So it's a whole process. So I would say the balance is I write a lot at night, like you said, because it's quiet. There's nobody, this in my ear, yada, yada. It's quiet. So I create the most at night. When I was preparing for the show, me and you had several conversations, and the first part is, where do I want to go with the show? What do I want it to look like? I don't want it to be a Renaissance Man, which is a fabulous show. I don't want it to be a World Girls. I don't want it to be Lego show. I don't want it to be Danny's show. I want it to be a Achilles show. I want it to be what SirJoker would do. I would sit and have a conversation with you because we've had conversations for hours on end. So I wanted it to be a conversation, but I wanted it to be a two-way conversation. So it has to make sense for the project. It has to be something I think is doable. It has to be something I think is going to be entertaining. And then I say, okay, let me put my energy into this basket. But I'm always writing. But I'm working on this project, but I'm always writing. So there's always a book of poetry being written for the most part. And I just go with that.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
No, that totally answers my question, because I'm the same way, you know.
Yeah.
You just kind of you have to figure out, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Before you figure out exactly what you want to do specifically, at least for myself, I go through my head and go through everything I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be this. I don't want it to be that. You know, you kind of base off your surroundings or other things that, you're influenced by or whatever, and go, well, I'm not looking to do this or looking to do that. And
Right.
I don't know if that's how you work, but I start there and then kind of go, well, this is what I'm looking to do. This is what I'm interested in. And then you can kind of figure out from there what you want your show to be about, or your
Right.
poem, or what, song, whatever.
With a book, specifically, if I'm doing a collection,
Sure.
then I have to figure out what I don't want it to be, but I also have to figure out what I do want it to be. Am I just writing? When I start to get like around 20, 30 poems, do I have a theme? Do I want to shape it towards a theme? Do I have an idea of where I want this theme to go? Do I want it to be in chapters? Do I want it to just be random all over the place? So finding that theme is important. Finding that direction is important for me. And then I just go where the poetry takes me. I just go where the feelings and the emotions take me for the writing. Because with the writing, it's got to be important. And it's got to mean something, because I don't want it to be dead. I don't want it to be, basic. I want somebody to read this and go, oh, I remember when something like this happened to me. I want them, and music, I feel like you have less of a chance, because 10 songs, you have to have everyone pop and this and that. And I know that's got to be hard. When I got 100 poems in a book, 75 poems in a book, does all 75 have to be thought-provoking and emotional? No. But they do have to transition the story, so to speak.
They have to fit. They have to fit the common threads in which you're going for.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people, like with myself, they'll say, because it's different. I think it is different with books or with poetry in general.
Yeah.
Songwriters kind of get a bad, it's like you're going for a tone. Oh, so you're making a concept album. And it's like, no, I'm just going for a tone.
Right.
For the album, and I want it to, my favorite records hold that tone.
Right.
From the opening notes of track 1 to the closing notes on the last song. So for myself, it's like they're not concept albums.
Right.
They're just like a book or a collection of poetry or whatever. Mm-hmm. So for example, the songs that or the poems, you're like, do all 75 have to be thought-provoking or convey emotion? Yeah. No, but they have to fit. Yeah. They have to fit in the world in which you're making up out of thin air.
Yeah. And
if they don't fit, I call it the junkyard.
Yeah.
So, well, that, I have a whole box full of lines and verses and ideas,
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't make, they didn't make the record, so they go to the junkyard. Mm-hmm. But when I need it, but sometimes you'll be working on something. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Well, I need a blank song. I need a upper. I need or I need a melancholy song, whatever. You go to the junkyard, it's like, oh, I need a new set of tires, or I need a transmission. You go to the junkyard and you go through, oh, there it is. Bingo.
Yep.
It fits. It fits this make and model. You ever do that?
Yeah. I have pieces. Actually, what's funny is I started off writing in my notebook all the time. Then I transitioned to my computer, and I do a lot of my writing now in the notes section of my phone, which is crazy. But I start poems, I'll go back to them. Then I'm like, oh, these two might go together. But when I'm actually doing the writing, I'm doing it on my computer where I could say, all right, I have my framework like we talked about. I have these 8 lines. I have these 8 lines. Does this go together? Does this flow? Can I put this together into something that's cohesive and makes sense? Because I don't ever want somebody to read my poem and be like, "Oh, this is a bunch of bullshit," or "I've heard this 800 times."
Okay,
You don't.
so
You want people to grab it and take it.
that leads me to another great question. So the word bullshit, you just said the word bullshit.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty true. You know yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've written songs, especially early on, that you kind of go,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna figure out you're bullshitting them. Like you're pulling, you
Mm-hmm.
don't believe in this song. This song doesn't represent you, So there's the word bullshit, but then there's
Right.
also the other word, which is authenticity, which to me, authenticity, genuine, all that sort of stuff, they're all similar words in my vocabulary when it comes to the writing
Right.
process or, your finished product.
Mm-hmm.
Is it authentic? Is it authentically you? Because if it's not, if you can sense that it's not and smell the bullshit, the audience has already turned off their ears, or if in your case, their eyes.
Yeah.
They know before usually.
Yep. And it's delete, 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 delete. Because I also, when I'm writing, my process is if I'm writing a poem, I'm thinking about performing it. And I don't perform every one, but I'm in my head, I'm like, how is this going to hit somebody in their heart? How is it going to hit in their ears? Are they going to be able to? I want it to resonate with you. I don't care what you take away from the poem because it doesn't have to be what I was intending for you to write, but you should take something away from it. That's every poem. And yeah, and it's going to be, there's going to be stuff that's transition, that's fluff, that, because you know everything you've written in every song. So, you're like, all right, this is some crap. Yeah, but I'm going to try.
King Sport Cal brings
So I'm going to, we got 3 minutes left. I'm going to wrap up here. This is called free association, sir.
Okay.
Quick answers. All right. I'm going to tell you a name. And you're going to tell me what you think. All right.
All right.
George Carlin.
Greatest stand-up comedian of all time.
The Beatles.
The original band.
I like that. Bob Dylan.
The GOAT.
Traveling is your top 5 things to do, sir. You have
Yes.
explained to me.
Yes.
If you're going to take one trip, where are you taking that trip to and why?
I'm going to go to Los Angeles so I can finally see the Hollywood sign and go to the beach.
Wow.
And pot's legal there. So, oh yeah. There's far too many things to see in this country before I start traveling abroad.
Wow. What's your greatest goal that people don't know about you or wouldn't know about you? Your greatest goal, your aspiration that, is in your head every day, in your heart, but people wouldn't know.
To have 3 houses. To own 3 houses. One in a metropolitan area, like a condo or an apartment. A big house in like a suburb area where I would normally live. And then like a cabin, like a reclusive place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Favorite movie ever? Or if you don't have a favorite ever, most watched movie ever.
Well,
what is it?
The Godfather and Rocky, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in the search for, and we're going way left, search for the future Mrs. Rob Fishbeck. What are you looking for?
Well, in my years, the reason that none of the other ones worked is because the number one thing that I've learned about myself is they're going to have to be able to deal with me.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can pass that, then we might be going somewhere.
Okay.
But at the same time, I want to challenge to add on to that. It's not all about me. It's about finding somebody that A, can deal with me, but B, I can learn from and grow because of them.
Excellent. I like that. Starving artists.
That's what it says on my driver's license.
Where did the Renaissance man come from?
My grandmother,
Really?
on my dad's side. Growing up, she always said, be a Renaissance man. And I was like from the kings and queens time, like the Renaissance era. And she goes, no, a Renaissance man is somebody who is talented at many different things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know just one field. They're good at a lot of things. They've tried a lot of things, or they've done a lot of things. So that's why I dabble in all sorts of stuff and, always bring my A game for all of it. So, yeah.
Second to last question, sir. You called your arts sex of your personality. Sex of your personality. What does that mean?
SECTS.
Yes, SECTS.
Well, I know a lot of people, and a lot of people know different parts of me, and some people know all of me. And, there's the musician Rob, but that person might not know the guy that wants to go opening night to the new Marvel movie, or the guy that, loves to travel, or the guy that, wants to go decorate his yard for Christmas. Those are all different parts of my personality, but they're all they're all large parts of my personality, but they're all very vastly different. A lot of the people that like my music, they don't necessarily watch my YouTube show because they want to hear my music. They don't want to hear my opinion on the Suicide Squad trailer.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Last question, sir. If you could be any superhero or supervillain, who would you be and why? Or you can do both.
Batman.
That's so easy.
Batman.
The utility belt. Go ahead. Why?
It's the underground layer, and he works alone. But as Batman, I'm not an avid comic book reader, but I know enough. I've read enough, and I've read enough Wikipedia pages. Batman was somebody who fought alone for so long, and then realized in life you can go further together with other people than you could ever go on your own. Yep. So when I got to my mid-20s, it was like, maybe stop being so fucking stubborn and start to, let people inside this wall that you've built, because you're probably going to go further together with other people than you are on your own. And I think that's something that Batman, with like the Justice League and stuff, I think kind of figured out,
Mr. Fishbeck, I thank you very much, sir. And I look forward to our future collaborations. And I do feel part two, because we went a little long, and I feel like we only scratched the surface of the
Yeah, I tell long stories for short questions, and that's
it's fine.
It is what it is.
Good job. So, Mr. Fishbeck, I think we've established that you are an everyday expert, and I thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute blast, and fun. This show is going to be, I think this show is going to be a big hit. So. All right. That's it. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much.